Good morning. So as I look out today, Matthew 18:20 comes to mind. For where two or three gather in my name, there I am with them. So praise God for that truth, right? So, I feel like I could be a rebel again today because there's not a lot of people, and Joe's not here. So I could a little bit. I will be obedient. I'm going to be obedient. So anyway, good morning. I'm glad to be with each of you today and worship. And today, just going to share a little bit. In our household, we often have a struggle with this concept of gratitude. Those that are parents know, I want this, I want to go do that. And then on and on and on. Sometimes in the summer it can be even a little bit more than during the year. But so we are constantly at our house trying to teach gratitude. And I once heard one of the Christian artists share that he believes gratitude is a form of worship. And I love that concept because it is, and in my opinion as well. So throughout the scriptures, obviously there's lots of scripture that would speak to this. The Psalms are filled with it. First, I'm going to read three different ones to you today. Psalm 104, enter his gates with thanksgiving and his courts with praise. Give thanks to him and praise his name. Also, 1 Chronicles 16, give thanks to the Lord for he is good. His love endures forever. And lastly, Colossians 3, 15 and 16. Let the peace of Christ rule in your hearts, since as members of one body you were called to peace, and be thankful. Let the message of Christ dwell among you richly as you teach and admonish one another with all wisdom through psalms, hymns, and songs from the Spirit, singing to God with gratitude in your hearts. And so I challenge, I think it's obviously human nature. It's at the end of the day, it's not about what we do have, what we don't have. It's about who we are in Christ and his redeeming power. And so I think it's good for us, the young alike and the old alike, to just remember and give thanks for his goodness and his promises. And as we worship today, I hope that's something that speaks to your heart and dwells within you this week. So typically I don't read a prayer, but I found a prayer that I'm just going to read today as we start to worship. So would you please pray with me? Dear God, thank you for your amazing power and work in our lives. Thank you for your goodness and for your blessings over us. Thank you that you are able to bring hope through even the toughest of times, strengthening us for your purposes. Thank you for your great love and care. Thank you for your mercy and grace. Thank you that you are always with us and never leave us. Thank you for your incredible sacrifice so that we might have freedom and life. Forgive us when we don't thank you enough for who you are, for all that you do, for all that you've given. Help us to set our eyes and our hearts on you afresh. Renew our spirits. Fill us with your peace and joy. We love you and we need you this day and every day. We give you praise and thanks, for you alone are worthy. In Jesus' name, amen. Let us stand and worship.
The power of sin and darkness, whose love is mighty and so much stronger. The King of glory, the King above all kings, who shakes the whole earth in holy thunder and leaves us breathless in awe and wonder. Glory, the King above all kings. This is amazing grace. This is unfailing love. That you would take my place. That you would bear my cross. You lay down your life. That would be set free. Jesus, I sing for all that you've done for me. Who brings our chaos back into order? Who makes the orphan a son and daughter? The King of glory, the King of glory, who rules the nations with truth and justice, shines like the sun in all of its brilliance. The King of glory, the King above all kings. This is amazing grace. This is unfailing love. That you would take my place, that you would bear my cross. You lay down your life, that I would be set free. Oh, Jesus, I sing for all that you've done for me. Worthy is the Lamb who was slain. Worthy is the King who conquered the grave. Worthy is the Lamb who was slain. Worthy is the King who conquered the grave. Worthy is the Lamb who was slain. Worthy is the King who conquered the grave. Worthy is the Lamb who was slain. Worthy, worthy, worthy. Oh, this is amazing grace. This is unfailing love. That you would take my place, that you would bear my cross. You laid down your life, that I would be set free. Oh, Jesus, I sing for all that you've done for me. Oh, Jesus, I sing for all that you've done for me.
Good morning. I was gonna ask if anybody had trouble getting out of bed this morning, but my question's been answered. But people are just because there are the low numbers right now, people are filing in. But y'all are loud, so if the lights were any brighter, I wouldn't have been able to tell anyway. But it's I had trouble getting out of bed. I did a bunch of yard work yesterday, and this bass seems really heavy. But the grace I got from like being able to wake up this morning and come in and sing with you guys is fun. It does good stuff to my soul. Let's continue with this worship.
Sorrows like sea billows
In the path of your judgments, O Lord, we wait for you. Your name and your remembrance are the desire of your soul. My soul yearns for you in the night. My spirit within me earnestly seeks you, for when your judgments are in the earth and inhabitants of the world. I'm sorry. Oh, learn righteousness. Isaiah 26, 3 through 9. Let's pray. Dear Heavenly Father, I just thank you for this beautiful morning. I pray as we lift your name on high this morning, Lord, that we just raise our voices to the ceiling and just that we continue to sing like we just did in that last song, Lord, as we just cry out your name. I can't, distracted by my lowly works, my knuckles burn deep down. A holy God who sees my work through Jesus Christ, his death and birth. Feel his love down in my bones, adopted son, I'm not alone. Adopted son, I'm not alone. Glory, glory to the Son, the God, the King. Enthroned above the earth, he stretches out his precious love. Gates of hell will not prevail. He builds his church upon the rock, conquered sin and overcame our fears. We sing glory, glory to the Son, the God, the King. We praise the one who sits enthroned above the earth. He stretches out his precious love. Gates of hell will not prevail. He builds his church upon the rock, conquered sin and overcame our fears. I will not fear. The kingdom of God is here. I will not fear. The kingdom of God is here. Upon the cross our debts are paid, deep in the ground his body. Jesus' love, it conquers all down, and our souls we hear. Away from fear and death we run, with the strength that all is done. We traded fears and for the light, no longer in darkness no longer in darkness do we hide. Glory, glory to the Son, the God, the King. We praise the one who sits enthroned above the earth. He stretches out his precious love. Gates of hell will not prevail. He builds his church upon the rock, conquered sin and overcame our fears. We sing glory, glory to the Son, the God, the King. We praise the one who sits enthroned above the earth. He stretches out his precious love. Gates of hell will not prevail. He builds his church upon the rock, conquered sin and overcame our fears. I will not fear. The kingdom of God is here. I will not fear. The kingdom of God is here. I will not fear. The kingdom of God is here. I will
Lord, I want to praise you um, that we have no reason to fear, that you conquered fear on the cross. Lord, we spent this week celebrating the birthday of this great nation, and it is a nation that I believe that you created, and you gave us the resources and the power to single-handedly fulfill the Great Commission, Lord, and we haven't done that yet, and we ask for your forgiveness. But we pray that you just give us the grace and the will to continue. But Lord, even if we didn't have the protections that you offer here, if we didn't have the freedoms that you offer here, we still would have nothing to fear, because many things were nailed to the cross that day, but fear was one of them. And we have glory to look forward to, regardless of what we walk in between now and then. And we praise you for that, Lord. And we'll continue to praise you because you are a wonderful God. In Jesus' name, amen.
Lord of all creation, of water, earth, and sky. The heavens are your tabernacle. Glory to the Lord on high. God of wonders beyond our galaxy. You are holy, holy. The universe declares your majesty. And you are holy, holy, Lord of heaven and earth, Lord of heaven and earth. Early in the morning, I will celebrate the light. And as I stumble in the darkness, I will call your name by night. Wonders beyond our galaxy, you are holy, holy. The universe declares your majesty, and you are holy, holy, Lord of heaven and earth, Lord of heaven and earth. Hallelujah to the 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 Lord of heaven and earth. Beyond our galaxy, you are holy, holy. The universe declares your majesty, and you are holy, holy, Lord of heaven and earth, Lord of heaven and earth.
Of music to sing your praises. Thank you for our worship team, their commitment to serve you, lead us in worship, Father. We rejoice that we can continue to praise your name. Father, I lift up Joe, preaches here in a moment, that you speak through him, speak to our Lord, and help us to hear what you've called us to hear. We give you thanks, Lord, in your name. Amen. Please be seated. Well, I think everyone here that I see today knows what connection cards are and first impression survey. So they're at the visitors table there. We do have a number of special announcements. And the first is our block party is set. The date is set for September 7th, Saturday, September 7th. So we have these wonderful devices. If you're like me, it helps enhance my marriage and my responsibility by programming those into my phone. So September 7th, it's a great time of sharing the love of Christ to our neighbors here south of the tracks and anywhere else that we know. So everyone's invited. It's good to start plugging that into people's minds that that's coming up and to be thinking about areas that you can serve specifically too. So September 7th. Also, we have a women's gathering on this Friday night at 7 p.m. here at the church. So it's adult women only, but Friday night at 7. So we hope to see you there. And then this Saturday is our men's gathering also. So it's going to be a little different start to our men's gathering because we're going to serve a little bit. This Saturday is also the garage sale, which I'll come to in just a moment. But man, we're going to meet at 8 and then help get some tables set up and whatnot for the garage sale. Then we will start at 8:30. So we'll have a little bit of fellowship time, but probably not as much as normal at 8 o'clock. But we'll start our men's part at 8:30. So if you can be here at 8 to help set up for the garage sale, I know that they would appreciate it, those that are helping put that together. So we will be doing the second half. I think it's philosophy and ethics on the Truth Project that we'll be covering this Saturday. So I look forward to that time with you guys. For the block party, all right, we need first and foremost items to sell. Oh, garage sale, did I say? Sorry. Garage sale. We need items to sell. So bring your stuff out of your garage and your closets and wherever else. This week you can bring them, put them in the GC room, which is right next to Pastor Joe's office. Please bring those by because we're not going to do much if we don't have stuff to sell. So I know we've got a couple truckloads, I think. So please bring some. We also need clothes racks to hang clothes on. I don't know if anybody has that, but that would be very helpful. Or some cable or some rope or something. I don't know. So we have to get creative maybe. But if you have something to hang those clothes on, we need baked goods for the bake sale. So all you bachelors, dig out the Walmart baking aisle. And anyway, we need baked goods. And then lastly, we need workers. So the men will be gathering. The garage sale starts at 10 o'clock, and so the men will still be gathered. Hopefully we can help afterwards as well. But we need workers to do that. So they're starting to set up at 8 o'clock, as I mentioned. So several announcements there to keep in mind. Let's see, financial update. Let's go to that. All right, you can see up here, May giving 57, expenses 81. June giving 5,000, expenses 6,500. So again, I think most of you are aware of the Lord has provided for us through other churches giving. We are hoping to be big boys and girls someday and self-sustaining. That's our goal, and that goal, as you know, is 40 family units giving 188 per month. So something to achieve. Always encourage, though, 30 family units in May giving. That's awesome. That's a huge praise. And then 27 this month so far. So lots to be thankful for. Also, lots to continue to try and grow, areas to grow in our financial aspects too. So, and then giving, I think most of you know, we can give the 2 boxes here, one in the back of the sanctuary right up here. Also online are ways to give. And let's see, I believe now, Children's Church, do we have Kids Church today? We do. All right. Thank you, Harley. Bless you. So kids, we'll dismiss you guys. And then real quickly before we have Joe come up, Joe Marino asked me to just kind of share this with you guys. So Joe is not at home taking a nap, Pastor Joe. He's actually down in Wichita and preaching at a church that has financially supported us. So, but one thing Pastor Joe wants to make you aware of us as a congregation is, as you know, Obi-Wan is well on his way to being installed as an elder, and Biblical eldership is a multitude of pastors that preach, and so this is an opportunity for Joe to share one of his gifts, and that's the church model that we're trying to follow as well. And so we give thanks for that, and we're also thankful for Pastor Joe being able to be down in Wichita and preach as well. So just a little introduction there, but Joe, you're on now, buddy.
Well, thank you, Chris. Good morning, everyone. And I mean everyone say good morning. It's 4th of July weekend, so it's okay that, we knew the numbers would be a little bit down today, but that's okay. That means the lower the numbers, the longer we get to preach, right? Isn't that kind of the rule? But no. Eileen, are you the one that said no? Oh, my goodness, my goodness, my goodness. Well, I hope you all had a good week. I know the 4th of July week can be extremely hectic and extremely busy. It was for us, and I'm sure it was for you. And even in our prayer time this morning before we came out here, there were a lot of events that happened even in that small group, things that cause us to pray and to think about what it is God's trying to do. So life can be, as Chris said this morning, life can be really messy, right? Life can be full of things that sometimes catch you unawares. And so we acknowledge that today and know that God is going to send His Spirit today to do what He wants to do with this group right here, right? We're kind of like a big Sunday school class this morning, so that's okay. As you know, last week, Joe preached through Psalm 1, okay? So we are beginning a long journey every summer to cover the entire book of Psalms. Anybody know how many Psalms there are? You're close. You're getting closer. There's 150 Psalms. Okay, so if we do 10 Psalms a summer, how many years is that, you math majors? That's 15 years. So I'm committing myself, as old as I am, I'm committing myself to be here at the end of that 15 years. I don't usually plan to be here, plan ahead more than 15 months or 15 days. But to actually think about preaching through an entire book of Psalms in 15 years, and that does not include, by the way, Psalm 119, okay, which is the long, long psalm. There's 176 verses in Psalm 119. So I doubt that Joe is going to preach through that in one Sunday. So add another couple years, most likely. So we could be at 17 years easily to get through the book of Psalms, right? But there's something about the Psalms that are really intriguing, and I think we're extremely fortunate as believers to have God's Word, amen? But in the middle of that, if you open your Bible to the very middle, you usually land in the Psalms. And the Psalms are a real blessing for us for Scripture. We don't go there necessarily to find deep theological truths are there, but as far as doctrine for the church and all the rest of it, we don't go there usually for that. Usually, Joe and I were talking yesterday about the Psalms, and most of the time we think of Psalms as being something that you can sing. A lot of Psalms have been put to music, and a lot of them were even back then. But when you begin to read the Psalms, if you're doing daily Bible reading through a program, usually there's a psalm that's thrown in there too for your daily Bible reading. And they can be extremely challenging. The Psalms can talk about, the wickedness of man, the goodness of man, the goodness of God, talk about kings and rulers, talk about, the fruit that comes from labor, even can bring comfort. How many of you know by heart Psalm 23? Everybody does. The Lord is my shepherd. I shall not want. It's a comforting message when we read the Psalms. So Psalms are full of all kinds of messages for believers. And it was, Psalms was written, if you figure out the period of time when they were written, it's like 3,000 years ago. So we're talking about messages for us from God that came from millennia ago. and they still are extremely applicable for today. Now, since we're preaching through the Psalms, we have to do it in order. Psalm 1 was last week, which he did a really good job on, so Psalm 2 is today. And there are groups of Psalms in those 150. There are a few of them that are called Messianic Psalms. Okay, Psalms that talk about Messiah. Now, to teach you a couple words, I'll teach you a little Hebrew this morning and a little Greek, so you can be, you can go teach in a seminary somewhere, okay? The Hebrew word for Messiah is Mashiach. Well, that sounds like Messiah, right? So the word for Jesus in Hebrew is Yeshua. So Yeshua HaMashiach is Jesus, the Messiah. Jesus, literally, Jesus, the anointed one, okay? Well, in Greek, the word for Messiah, the word for anointed one, is Christos, which, what word do we get from that? Christ. Jesu Christu is Jesus, the anointed one. So we have Yeshua HaMashiach, and we have Jesu Christu. And we have the Messiah talked about in Psalm 2 that you're going to see. The interesting about Messianic Psalms, what they do, this particular Psalm, I'm not sure exactly when it was written. It doesn't say that it's a Psalm of David, but if you go to Acts chapter 4, you will see that the writer of Acts calls Psalm 2, quotes from it, and calls it a Psalm of David. So it is, and it was written by David. But a Messianic Psalm had a message right for the immediate time. In other words, when it was written, it had a message for those who were reading it then. But a Messianic Psalm gives you another projected, prophetic message about, in this case, as a Messianic Psalm, the coming of Messiah. And so it wasn't a surprise to many when Jesus came that this was a fulfillment of what the Old Testament had talked about for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. And so a Messianic Psalm is really critical to understanding the coming of Messiah. So whenever you see in the New Testament, a lot of Psalms are quoted. In the book of Hebrews, in Acts, in a number of Paul's letters, verses from the Psalms are extracted to put into the New Testament writings, which gives us an understanding, a good understanding of what it means to have been carried through the entire portion of Scripture to finally come to Jesus, right? So, let's begin. We need to read this psalm first, okay? Is that on the screen? Do we have that on, or do I just need to read it? We have it. I would like you all to read along with me. There's something about reading the word together that oftentimes implants it a little bit deeper into our hearts. Let's read it together. It's all in English, so we should be okay, right? Why do the nations rage and the peoples plot in vain? The kings of the earth set themselves, and the rulers take counsel together against the Lord and against his anointed, saying, let us burst their bonds apart and cast away their cords from us. He who sits in the heavens laughs. The Lord holds them in derision. Then he will speak to them in his wrath and terrify them in his fury, saying, as for me, I have set my king on Zion, my holy hill. I will tell of the decree. The Lord said to me, you are my son. Today I have begotten you. Ask of me, and I will make the nations your heritage and the ends of the earth your possession. You shall break them with a rod of iron and dash them in pieces like potter's vessel. Now therefore, O kings, be wise, be warned, O rulers of the earth. Serve the Lord with fear and rejoice with trembling. Kiss the Son, lest he be angry and you perish in the way, for his wrath is quickly kindled. Blessed are all who take refuge in him. Thank God for that last sentence. Blessed are all who take refuge in him. Let's pray and just ask God to do something today, shall we? Father, I just give this time to you. I thank you, Father, for the Spirit of God that moves across a place like this, Father, and encourages us, convicts us, convinces us, Father, of the truth and the verity of your word. We thank you, Lord, for this psalm. We know that it can be a little laborious going through these, but Father, we ask that you would minister to us in a special way today. Give us the words to say, give us those things to take to our hearts today that are meaningful to both us and to you. We praise you, Father, for your goodness, and we trust you to do what you said you're going to do. In Jesus' name, amen. Verses 1 through 3, the insane rage of nations and the laugh of God. I really like this psalm. It's not a fluffy psalm. It'd be hard to put this psalm to music, to sing about these things. But verses 1 through 3 talk about the rebellion of nations. And Abe was asking me this morning, well, how do you handle that very first verse? Why do the nations rage and peoples plot in vain? The word implies rage is a very powerful word. But the word implies almost like a mob-like rebellion against something. How many of you you're pretty young in this room, most of you. How many of you have seen the original Frankenstein movie, Boris Karloff, years ago? Okay. Do you remember when Dr. Frankenstein had his castle, and that's where he created his monster? And the people in the town, the monster was getting out and causing a little havoc in the town, right? And some people were not doing too well. And so they, as a town, decided that they were going to storm the castle and kill and find the monster and get rid of him. So I remember that scene. You know, it's kind of it's a black and white movie. It's really old. But this mob comes down the street, all carrying torches, of course. And the rage and the anger that they expressed in storming that door is kind of exactly what this idea of rage here is in Psalm number 2. Because that rage is when a person finds themselves in that condition with that kind of rage, they lose control, right? You're totally out of control when a person is in that state. I don't know if you've been around anybody who's been in a rage, okay? I imagine everybody has at one time experienced somebody that has been raging. And in that moment, just with a single person that's raging, you find yourself, that person so out of control that you can't talk to them, you can't reason with them, you can't get to the bottom of why it is that they're so angry. And so this is the kind of rage and anger that David is talking about in this psalm. Why do nations rage against who? Against the Lord and against his anointed, his Mashiach, his Christos. Why do nations rage against those two? So the answer, I think you have to go back. You got to go back a long ways to find out why. In fact, you have to go back all the way to the Garden of Eden. There's something about the message of the gospel that is so penetrating into the hearts of men. And that didn't start in the book of Matthew when Jesus was born. That started way back in Genesis. Adam and Eve were there. Adam, the first created man, he's the one blamed for sin entering the world, right? So by the time you get to Genesis chapter 3, that's all. Genesis has 50 chapters? By the time you get to Genesis 3, the world is already under the curse of sin. Didn't take long, did it? They couldn't even wait to have a few kids. Maybe those kids have kids, some grandkids, some great-grandkids, some great-great-grandchildren, then all of a sudden somebody screws up and sins. But no, it had to happen right there with Adam and Eve. Didn't take long. And so that started the ball rolling. In other words, all hell broke loose and the battle began. Sin entered the world, and that was in Genesis 3, verse 15. The first gospel message. In fact, in Latin, the word is proto-evangelium. It is the first mention, they say, in Scripture of the gospel. And what does it say? It says, I will put enmity between you and the woman, and between your offspring and hers. He will crush your head, and you will strike his heel. And who do you say that to? Serpent, the devil, Satan. He will crush. Who's he? It's like one of Eve's kids, one of Eve's, the seed of the woman, the offspring of the woman in the garden. One of those will crush Satan's head, even though he, the serpent, will bruise his heel. That's where the whole thing began. That's the first mention of the gospel. So really, if you look at Scripture from Genesis to Revelation, what a miraculous book that's been put together, where the gospel goes, the thread of the gospel starts in Genesis and goes all the way through to the end of the book. It goes through Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and the creation of the nation of Israel. The Old Testament prophets, the prophetic prophets of Isaiah and Jeremiah, the minor prophets. It gets finally until Matthew, when we know that Jesus comes on the scene. David, who wrote this psalm, it is through his line that Messiah would come. And if you look at one of the genealogies, there's a genealogy in Matthew, and there's a genealogy in Luke. And one of them goes all the way back to Adam. Jesus' line goes all the way back to the seed of the woman, right? He will crush his head. And that's the gospel. So that's, when you ask where do we go to find out why these nations rage against God and his Son, God and his anointed? Why do they? And nations, of course, are made up of what? Dogs and cats? No. Nations are made up of people. Millions and millions of people. And so nations are made up of individual people that have to make a decision one way or another about God, whether he exists, who he is, do they believe what he says about himself? And those nations, when they are against God, and there have been many, that rage, though, that they have is so out of control that it's in vain. It cannot stop God's program. In no way. Why do we know that? Verse 4, he who sits in heaven laughs. I love that verse. Now, when you think of laughing, what do you think of? I don't know, you laugh at a joke, right? You laugh at someone's funny circumstances. But that isn't the kind of laugh that we're talking about here. He who sits in heaven laughs, and the Lord holds them in derision, that verse says. What is derision? You probably didn't use that word this week. I did. Derision is mocking. It's ridicule. God is looking at them and he laughs because he says what they're doing is so pointless to the program I have set forth from the very beginning, and no one can stop it. And so he laughs. I love that. Spurgeon says this when they talk about, where's that verse? Let us burst their bonds apart and cast away their cords from us. Spurgeon says, to a graceless neck, the yoke of Christ is intolerable. But to the saved sinner, it is easy and light. We may judge ourselves by this. Do we love that yoke, or do we wish to cast it from us? Do we love that we are a bondservant of his, or do we, as so many in the world do, want to cast that away, cast it from us? It's all in vain. He laughs. He laughs. God holds them in derision. He holds them in mockery and ridicule. One commentator put it this way: this derisive laughter of God is the comfort of all those who love righteousness. It is the laughter and the might of holiness. It is the laughter of the strength of love. And listen to these words. People who wrote a couple hundred years ago really write in some pretty interesting English. It says, God does not exult over the sufferings of sinning men. He does hold in derision all the proud boastings and violence of such as seek to prevent his accomplishment of his will. Let me read that last part again. God does hold in derision all the proud boastings and violence of such as seek to prevent the accomplishment of God's will. That is when God laughs and says, in no way will anyone interfere with the accomplishment of what I began so long ago, my will for this earth. It's an amazing thing. There's been many who have tried to knock this out, to have destroyed the gospel, to have destroyed Christianity. It started early. There's a Roman Caesar named Diocletian, interesting name, in like the 4th or the 3rd century. He was Caesar in the 3rd century into the 4th. He boasted and he said literally, I have extinguished the name of Christian and the superstition of Christ. But he's dead and gone, right? He's no longer here. Jesus still is. He did not succeed. And then attempts have been made throughout all those years. From that century on, there have been attempts that have been made over and over and again to extinguish the gospel, to put out the light, to create an environment where everyone believed that there was no God and that especially there was no Jesus, and he was not who he said he was. There have been attempts at that for centuries, and there are still attempts today. God still laughs. What about our own country? As Stephanie was praying this morning, she was thanking God for the country that we live in, right? I do too. An amazing land. But even in an environment where still the name of Jesus can be proclaimed, there is still that raging, violent disbelief that wants to wipe out anything to do. Starts with taking down statues, starts getting rid of crosses, all these things, these symbols that represent some of the beginnings of our land. When those go, I guarantee you, Jesus is still going to be here. He still will be the one that is in control of everything that God has created. This land, thank God, still we have the ability to meet, to pray, to talk about Jesus, to preach about him, to go out on the street and do it if we want to. We still have the freedom to do that, even though even that is under attack. But there are nations around the world, in my lifetime, your lifetime, and until Jesus comes back, there will be nations around this world that want to stamp out the message of God, the message of the gospel. You can name some today. I mean, I'm sure it's pretty tough to go out on the street in China and preach Jesus, or in Russia, or other places, even now in Europe, where their churches abound but are totally empty. It's everywhere. But God still laughs. That, in a sense, should be encouraging. You know, God especially wants these kings and rulers to know that there is a king that's greater than they are. Right? We believe that with all of our hearts. And we don't need to be reminded, we do need to be reminded that for ourselves, because sometimes in this world, don't we get a little weary? Don't we get a little dismayed about some of the things we see happening around the world that seem to be, you know, God, what are you doing in this situation? I don't understand. But we need to be reminded all the time, why does he laugh? Why does he mock? Why does he ridicule those that come against him sitting on his throne in heaven? Because he knows that nothing they say or do can change him or his plan. Verse 7 kind of changes a little bit. We get into somebody else, in a sense, begins to speak here. It is most likely the anointed one. We would call the Son begins to speak in verse 7. I will tell of the decree. The Lord said to me, the anointed one says, you are my son. Today I have begotten you. Ask of me, and I will make the nations your heritage and the ends of the earth your possession. You shall break them with a rod of iron and dash them into pieces like a potter's vessel. Now that verse is the verse about the begotten Son is in the New Testament as well. I want to read Hebrews chapter 1 to you. I think you would find it really interesting. Long ago, at many times and in many ways, God spoke to our fathers by the prophets. But in these last days, he has spoken to us by his Son, whom he appointed the heir of all things, through whom also he created the world. I don't know how many times we think of Jesus as the creator, but he is. He is the radiance of the glory of God and the exact imprint of his nature. I love this translation, the ESV, because it just says it so well. He is the radiance of the glory of God and the exact imprint of his nature, and he upholds the universe by the word of his power. After making purification for sins, he sat down at the right hand of the Majesty on high, having become as much superior to angels as the name he has inherited is more excellent than theirs. For to which of the angels did God ever say, quote, "You are my son, today I have begotten you"? Or again, "I will be to him a father, and he shall be to me a son"? Now, what causes some issue sometimes is our understanding of what the word begotten means. Jesus was not created. He is not a created being. He was not created by God. He has been, always will be the same yesterday, today, and forever. What does John 1:1 say? In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. And then verse 14 says, and that Word became flesh and dwelt among us. So who's the Word? Jesus is the Word. In the beginning was the Word was with God, and the Word was God. So he was not created. Begotten symbolizes, and you have to stay with me here, it's just kind of one of those theological statements, I guess. The word begotten is an important idea as contrasted to the word created. It describes a relationship between two beings of the same essential nature and being. I dare you to repeat that. I can't repeat it without reading it. In other words, it's a title. It is something that was given to him for a particular purpose, or has always been with him as the second person of the Trinity, part of the Godhead. He is and always will be the creator of all, and he will always be the Son, the title, the Son of God. And he chose to become flesh. And when that word became flesh, then that's where you see the God-man. And in no other way could God satisfy the sin that began way back in Genesis chapter 3. He couldn't satisfy that unless the one who died, the one who died on that cross, the one who was buried, and the one who rose again had to be an eternal being. And that was Jesus. That's what makes Christianity so unique. There is no other religion in the world that talks about this kind of act that God has done. And that's why Scripture says there is no other name given under heaven by which men can be saved. It's Jesus. There's no other way. We get in trouble sometimes for saying that, right? But that's what God says. That's the word. And so we take it to heart. So the begotten, don't let it bother you. It's just very clear. The Son is not a created being. John 1:1 claims it. But I think we should read also. What time is it? 11 o'clock. Oh, we got time. Funny. Colossians chapter 1, verses 15, says this. He, talking about Jesus, is the image of the invisible God, the firstborn of all creation. For by him all things were created in heaven and on earth, visible and invisible, whether thrones or dominions or raging nations, I've added that, or rulers or authorities. All things were created through him and for him. And he is before all things, and in him all things hold together. And then Paul says, and this is the one who is the head of the body of the church. He is our king. So it's extremely clear. He always been, always will be. The only way could the bloody cross and the empty tomb provide everything needed for a gospel message that saves is this truth about who he is, the begotten Son of God. Nothing else would have worked. Nothing else would have satisfied the sin question. He's king. All judgment has been given to him and him alone. So the final decree is in verses 10 through 12. It says, now therefore, O kings, be wise. Be warned, O rulers of the earth. Serve the Lord with fear and rejoice with trembling. There's that word fear again. Kiss the Son, lest he be angry and you perish in the way, for his wrath is quickly kindled. Blessed are all who take refuge in him. Again, that's that last verse, I guess, that last sentence. We could make a song out of that. That sounds pretty good. It's hard to make a song out of this. And so this psalm is so deep and so challenging to us that the New Testament writers felt it was important enough to extract out of it and give us a second meaning for Psalm 2, the Son of God. We can defy God, we can perish, or we can surrender to him. We can find salvation and rest. And you know what's the most important thing, I think, in conclusion today, to leave you with today, is those, as someone said, those who defy God are broken, but those who depend on him are blessed. Which one depicts our life today? Know this commentator said, know this, when Jesus is thrown into the scenario, things change. People get reminded of God, they get convicted of their sin, and are challenged to pursue holiness. Those who follow as a result, they like it. Those who do not follow do not like it at all. What is it Jesus said over and over about himself? So that when he comes into a conversation, when that word Jesus itself comes into the middle of a conversation, two things can happen. One can be immediate rejection, immediate rebellion, or a total acceptance. He is the divider of families. He's the divider of friends. He's the divider of nations, because when we talk about him, people line up on both sides of the fence immediately. We have to remember that when he enters the scene, things really change. People do get reminded about God. They get convicted of their sin and are challenged to pursue holiness. Why, again, do the nations rage? They rage because they don't like the message. And they will do anything to subvert it. Now, that's the negative message. The positive message is God still laughs. And if you're a follower of his, and we like being under as a bondservant of Christ. He doesn't bring bondage. He releases us from bondage. But he provides us the ability to walk with him as a bondservant. Just the way an oxen would be led to go straight, to go exactly where it is he was supposed to go. He is, by all means, to be praised. Be therefore, O kings, it says, be wise, be warned, O rulers of the earth. That was true 3,000 years ago, and it's true today. Be warned, O rulers of nations. What does Scripture say? Paul says, God is not mocked. Plans that are made against him fail. And grab onto that, because I need to do that. You need to do that, because we live in a world where we see and hear things that are so particularly anti-Christian, anti-God. Right? It's everywhere. And it has been. There's nothing new under the sun, right? This sort of rebellion has been going on for a long time. But we're alive now. This is our generation. We live in a time when all kinds of amazing things are happening. God is still at work doing what he set out to do way back in Genesis chapter 3. It's not over yet. We're not to the book of Revelation. You want to preach through a difficult book? Grab that one. That'll get you. But that end hasn't come yet. That completion of the gospel, that fulfillment of what the gospel has promised, to be with him forever, to get rid of this problem called sin, and to extinguish it and eradicate it forever and ever, will someday happen. But it hasn't yet. Right? We look forward to it. Paul says you should be looking forward to it every day. But where do we fit in this? We fit because we need, not only as believers, we need encouragement. We need someone to come alongside of us, which is exactly what the Holy Spirit does. He is the encourager. He is the one who intervenes for us, almost like a lawyer would for his client. He comes alongside of us to give us the things that we need. And trials come, as we talked about before we came out here this morning. Trials come in life. Life is messy. What are trials meant to do? Trials are meant to bring us to a certain point of acknowledgement of who it is who's really in charge, but also is to produce in us something. It's to produce in us endurance, patience. It's to produce in us the works of God, the works of the Spirit, the fruit of the Spirit. Love, joy, peace, patience, self-control. All those are to be results and indications of the Spirit working in our life. So let them rage. Doesn't bother me. In fact, the more people rage against him, the more something builds up inside of you to give you the strength that you need to be able to repel that enemy. That those thoughts that come, those people that come against you, those people that come against him. That just makes something rise up in you and me. And that's what it's meant to do. The gospel is with us and has been with us for a long time. And it started a lot longer ago than we ever thought. Because the Bible only has paradise in a tiny, tiny little bit in the beginning. And then everything fell apart. And we've been dealing with it ever since. If you believe the Jewish calendar, we're not quite yet to 6,000 years. Not millions of years, sorry, don't believe that. But almost 6,000 years ago, all this stuff happened. Think what's happened in all that time. And in the middle of it, it's almost like, look at an hourglass. Picture an hourglass in your mind. Can you do that? We don't use them much anymore, but they're cool to put on your fireplace, right? But the sand on the top is all this giant bunch of sand begins to come down, and it comes down into a very narrow part of the hourglass and then begins to spread out. And that's kind of the way history has gone. God has narrowed it down from the very beginning to where we finally get to Matthew when Jesus was born. And then after that, what happened? Sands of the hourglass begin to spread out again. And his message, what did he say to do? Go ye into all the world, preach the gospel. All the world. The book of Acts says you go to Jerusalem, go to Samaria, and then to the utter parts of the world. He zeroed in on a particular line of people to bring us our Messiah. And then that Messiah, when he was killed violently, buried, and 3 days later rose again. Why? For the justification, healing with sin that you and I need. So, where are you with this? Maybe Psalm 2, hopefully. We could preach again on Psalm 2 next week, and it would be all different. Because there's so many bunny trails you can go down in this psalm to see God working in a whole bunch of different ways. But let it kind of, I guess, sink in today, that important part for us. Those who defy God are broken. Those who surrender to him find salvation and rest. Those who follow him, they like it. Those who don't like it at all. Let's pray. Father, we're so thankful today for your word, this particular song, Father. It just kind of it hits us hard. And so, Father, we pray that you would help us not only to be able to withstand the onslaught of the evil one, but that we would be able to stand strong with the armor of God and with the fruit of the Spirit. We thank you, Father, for the fact that you are not surprised by anything. You are not confused. You are not altered. You don't change your program. And that gives us, Father, the anchor that we need to live our kind of hectic, helter-skelter lives that we live today. Give us and grant us, Father, the knowledge of that foundation. Give us the joy that we can have as part of your family. Give us, Father, the desire to see others join that family. We thank you, Lord, for calling us. We thank you that we got to choose the one who chose us. Well, Lord, we pray that you would take all the stuff that has happened this week and the last couple of weeks, all that's going to happen in the week coming, starting tomorrow. That, Lord, we'd anchor ourselves totally in the knowledge that you and your plan will not be put asunder. So we thank you, Lord, for this good day. We thank you, Father, in a positive way that you are the King. You have set yourself above all else, and we praise you for that. In Jesus' name, amen. Well, as we always do, every Sunday we do it on purpose. As we celebrate communion, I wrote down 3 C's. You know, we're created beings in the image of God. We are called to be part of his family. We're called to accept his Son as our Savior. We are chosen by God to be part of a great and large family. And we get the ability and the privilege of celebrating communion every week. We don't normally read it, but I want to read out of 1 Corinthians chapter 11, which is kind of the setting for communion, the setting for what we call the Lord's table. Communion is something that is done by a church, is done by a local church all around the world. We don't demand that you be a member of this church, participate in communion. We just ask that you be a member of the family of God, because it's pointless and meaningless to you and me if we're not part of that family. Paul says in 1 Corinthians 11, he says, "For I received from the Lord that which I also delivered to you, that the Lord Jesus, on the same night in which he was betrayed, he took bread. And when he had given thanks, he broke it and said, 'Take, eat, this is my body which is broken for you. Do this in remembrance of me.' In the same manner, he took the cup after supper, saying, 'This cup is the new covenant in my blood. This do, as often as you drink it, in remembrance of me. For as often as you eat this bread and drink this cup, you proclaim the Lord's death until he comes.'" And sometimes we should read the verses afterwards, I think. It says in verse 27, "Therefore, whoever eats this bread or drinks this cup of the Lord in an unworthy manner will be guilty of the body and blood of the Lord. But let a man examine himself, and so let him eat of the bread and drink of the cup." It's always good, as often, and it says as often as you do this. You could do this every day. You could do this at home. You could do it as a church every Sunday. Some do it every month. I mean, they just pick a time when they do it. But Paul says, whenever you do it, do this in remembrance of him, what he did for you and for me. But let a man, he says, and that includes everybody, let men and women examine themselves, test themselves, examine themselves before they eat and drink. It's always good to clear the air, to clear the heart, to clear the mind, all the things that are pounding inside there, get rid of those. If forgiveness is needed, ask for that. If prayer is needed, ask for that. But before we come to the Lord's table, we want to be absolutely sure and convinced that we belong to Him. And that assurance, to have that assurance that you belong to Him, gives you the ability to grow and to continue to walk with Him, because you know that He loves you and trusts you and He saved you. So, when you come forward this morning, we have on your left, we have one here. On your right, we have one here. A station with a person that will be there. I don't think with the size of the group today, we probably do not need a person at the back station. If you want to go back there and partake, or you can come to the middle here and partake alone or with your family. It's your choice. Let's just ask God to, with all that we've talked about today, let's just ask God to calm our hearts and to convince of the knowledge of Him and to thank Him for all that He's done. So, Father, we do thank You this morning. We thank You, Lord, for Your provision for us. We thank You, Father, and in Jesus' name we thank You that we can remember, as often as we do this, we remember the broken body and the shed blood of Christ. We examine ourselves, Father, in a way to test and to make sure that our heart is clean before You. Father, it's a good thing to constantly air things out, forgiveness and to just praise You, because that's always needed. In this service today, we just ask Your blessing upon all that we do. We thank You for Your Son, and we celebrate Him today. In Jesus' name, amen.
Without You, I fall apart. You're the one who guides my heart. Lord, I need You. Oh, I need You. Every hour I need You. My one defense, my righteousness. Oh God, how I need You. Where sin runs deep, Your grace is more. Where grace is found is where You are. And where You are, Lord, I am free. Holiness is Christ in me. And Lord, I need You. Oh, I need You. Every hour I need You. My one defense, my righteousness. Oh God, how I need You. So teach my song to rise to You. When temptation comes my way, when I cannot stand, I'll fall on You. Jesus, You're my hope and stay. Hey, oh, I need righteousness. Oh God, how I need you. You're my one defense, my righteousness. Oh God, how I need you. You are my one defense, my righteousness. Oh God, how I need you. Let no one caught in sin remain inside the lie of inward shame. We fix our eyes upon the cross and run to Him who showed great love and bled for us. Freely you bled for us. Christ is risen from the dead, trampling over death by death. Come awake, come awake, come and rise up from the grave. Christ is risen from the dead, we are one with Him again. Come awake, come awake, come and rise up from the grave. Beneath the weight of all our sin, you bow to none but heaven's will. No scheme of hell, no scoffer's crown, no burden great can hold you down. In strength you reign forever. Let your church proclaim. Christ is risen from the dead, trampling over death by death. Come awake, come awake, come and rise up from the grave. Christ is risen from the dead, we are one with Him again. Come awake, come awake, come and rise up from the grave. Oh, death, where is your sting? Oh, hell, where is your victory? Oh, church, come stand in the light. The glory of God has defeated the night. Oh, death, where is your sting? Oh, hell, where is your victory? Oh, church, come stand in the light. Our God is not dead, He's alive, He's alive. Christ is risen from the dead, trampling over death by death. Come awake, come awake, come and rise up from the grave. Christ is risen from the dead, we are one with Him again. Come awake, come awake, come and rise up from the grave.
All right, would you pray with me, please? Lord, we thank you for this time. Father, just thanks for the gift of worship and to really see your goodness and your grace and your mercy and the hope, Lord, that we find in you. Father, I pray for a broken world that doesn't know you. And Father, may we just be so overflowing with joy and gratitude that people would notice that and that we could speak of who you are and they would see their need for you, Father. So, Lord, we just thank you and praise you. We lift up the broken world. Father, we thank you for this church. We thank you for this building. While it's just a building, we thank you for this place to worship. Father, be with Pastor Joe as he travels. And Lord, we lift up also the new lives that come into this world this month for Harley and Addie and, Lord, their families, protection and calmness in the home that could be filled with joy too, Lord. Father, you are good. We love you. And it's in your holy name we pray. Amen. Have a great week.